We got a heated battle in the Central Division. We got a three-way tie between the Stars, the Avs, and of course, the Minnesota Wild. We dive in. Let's go. The Wild have just 5 games left in the regular season. The Avs have 6. The Stars have 5. It is a fun time of year, Gis. This is what we all been waiting for. I wish it wasn't so tight. I wish we had a lead, but hey, it feels like playoffs are starting now, right? Would you agree?
It'd be way too easy if it was that easy, right, Obi?
Right.
You know, I actually had been thinking about this. I love to fish, I love to hunt, I love to golf, but I think this is my favorite season right now. The kind of the last preamble to the playoffs, the jockeying of positions, as you mentioned, a 3-way logjam. At the Central Division top. Then you've got the intensity of playoff hockey. Then you've got 7-game series. I think I mentioned it to you at one point. A lot of my quote-unquote hockey aficionado buddies hardly even watch the regular season because they kind of, moan and groan about the lack of intensity. And there'll be no moaning and groaning by any hockey fan. And if you're a true hockey fan, you love all 82 games or whatever they're playing these days. But 'tis the season, to be sure. And really just a shout out to all hockey fans to sit back and enjoy it. Because like you said, could be all dyed in the wool. The Wild have clinched, certainly. But who they play, where they play, how many games they're going to play at home, how many games they're going to play on the road is TBA. And we're going to know in a week.
Yeah, for sure. And, you just mentioned, some people think the regular season, not every game counts. I mean, this proves every game counts because when you play 82 games in a season and you're 77 games in and you're tied with 2 other teams in the same division, let alone, that proves that they all matter. And right now they matter more than ever. So what do you, let's start, before we dive in, we'll take a look at the schedule later in the show.
Sure.
We'll go through it, kind of figure out who we think's going to end up on top of the division.
Sure.
Spoiler, we kind of hope that it's the Wild, but let's take a look because it's going to be tight. They play some of the other teams play some terrible teams compared to us, but we'll see. But let's start with what everybody's talking about, everybody's thinking about, Mr. Kirill Kaprizov. You have an update for us? When can we expect to see him back on the ice?
Yeah, well, let's just say that he's with the team in Pittsburgh, and he will be with the team practicing and skating, and they're going to be monitoring it. But to me, the fact that Dean Evison took him on the road means that his return is imminent. I know for a fact from my sources, that they'd love to get him a game or 2 before the playoffs start. There's a situation where he's game ready versus he's practice ready. But just to me, and from what I'm hearing from inside the organization, having him close, as in on the road and with the team and skating and practicing, means his return is imminent. And, that's quite a statement. Lower body injuries, hamstrings and everything else take some time, but that's just a credit to what an elite athlete he is and how focused he's been on rehab, not traveling with the team for the last couple of weeks. We're into week 4 now without him. I think the projection was 4. They've had the luxury of not having to try to hurry him back because they've been winning so much, they being the Minnesota Wild. So I think you can look at any time. And there's actually a little update, too, on Gustav Nyquist, the kind of player that was picked up from Columbus. He had an upper body injury. He is with the team traveling, I am told, and he is going to get a game or 2 in, which they really wanted to the whole time. Billy G spent $1 million on him just to see, knowing that he was hurt, knowing that he could be a difference in the playoffs, but jumping into the playoffs versus playing a game or 2 coming off, an upper body injury is one thing and another. So there is help on the horizon, Cole, with Kirill Kaprizov with the team and with Gustav Nyquist with the team, and that bodes well for the Minnesota Wild, especially in the forward position with some injuries going on to Mason Shaw right now and some players being dinged up. Getting that little litmus test, getting that little peak of 3 periods or 6 periods by these guys will be important to the Wild in the last 5 games down the stretch here.
Yeah, and talking about Kaprizov, let me ask you a question too that somebody actually sent us on Twitter. We obviously at Hot Dish Sports, we cover the Twins. We do podcasts for the Twins, the Vikings, the Wolves sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, when we need to. When
Sorry,
playoffs
Minnesota
are around, you're going to see.
Timberwolves
Yeah, right, exactly. But obviously when we're talking about the Twins, we see them baby Byron Buxton. because obviously he's had lots of injuries. But if we were coming towards the end of the season for the Twins, we were already clinched in the playoffs, we would probably see them sit Buxton. Same with like the Vikings. We talked about in the podcast in January. We're like, hey, are they going to actually be putting Jefferson out there, or you do not want to risk him getting hurt? So my question is with Kaprizov, even though we are in a 3-way tie, how dire is it, do you think, that we put Kaprizov out there in situations where he could get hurt? I know he doesn't have like a huge injury past like a Buxton necessarily, but he is a guy that you need him in playoffs if you want to make a run. And we know lower body injuries, they can linger. So how much do you think we see him out there? And 2, how important is it that he is out there knowing that we've already clinched? Is it really important to not have to face Dallas or Colorado in that first round?
I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. That's why Billy Guerin gets paid the money he does, and we get paid the money we do on Hot Dish Sports here. But to your point, doctors are going to clear him. There's a code of conduct in the National Hockey League that the player and the doctors really, truly, at the end of the day, make the decisions. And the jockeying for position on their playoff slot, to me, is secondary just in the fact that Kirill Kaprizov needs to get in a game situation to really find out how healthy he is. And so I think it's going to be, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think it's going to be a little bit of yin and yang there. And I think as importantly as where they finish, the Minnesota Wild as a team, is where Kirill Kaprizov starts in the playoffs for his Minnesota Wild Hockey Club. So it's a little bit of a combination of both. And the fact of the matter is, with Kirill kind of just being able to wean him back in the lineup versus just throw him off the dock, you've got the Gustav Nyquist that we've talked about that can step in. You've got other players that can step in. You can give other players a rest when guys like Nyquist and others jump into the lineup. There is a numbers crunch at the bottom of the line combinations here that's going to filter all of its way up, and it's a coverable line change-up situation. So those are all the positives. The negatives are, to me, is that you rush him back and he's not quite ready because he doesn't know about game situations and game conditions, nursing the injury that he is nursing, and something bad happens for him in the longer duration of the playoffs versus just that quick flash at the end of the playoffs. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so kind of to follow up on that question, the second half of the question that we were asked is, how important to you is it that we win the division? We're already in playoffs, right? We've already made it. Is it smarter for the Wild to try to not put Kaprizov on the line too much? I know he's going to be playing. He's going to get in those game situations, but, maybe not have him out there for 20, 30 minutes, but maybe 15 to 20 minutes. And that way you kind of preserve him. You kind of put him a little less risk.
Yeah.
But then if you start doing that, you're obviously not going 100% towards winning the division. So my question to you is, how important do you think it is to actually win this division? Beyond marketing, obviously, as season ticket holders, marketing things, winning the division is very important, not just making playoffs. But do you feel like our matchups are going to be better? How important is it to you that we win the division, let alone just make it in?
Well, I think that would be a much easier question to answer if the Wild absolutely sucked the last 15 games without Kirill Kaprizov. Sure. I do think that they have proven they can win and they can beat quality teams without him. I think that they can go on winning streaks without him. If they were 500 or less than 500 since Kirill Kaprizov got injured, I know how I would answer that question. But this is a tried and true team now. Yeah, I mean, they lost a couple games here, won a couple games in April, but this was a 15-4 hockey club in the month of March, and that was largely without Kirill Kaprizov. So I still think you have to run the race, because let's just say you're trying to get to the playoffs and trying to get that home ice advantage, and you do something prematurely with Kirill and you injure him further. I mean, in the Wild's mind right now, they plan on playing hockey into April and into May and into June, hopefully. And, I mean, that's another 2 months. And so you're looking at a very short time period here to, gain some sort of visual or physical confirmation looking at Kirill in this situation. So I just think you keep playing, you do what's best at the moment, and you see what's see where that springboard you and what you need to do when you no longer have a choice. I mean, this could be a situation where Kirill just is going to start playing in the playoffs because they went 4-1 on the last five road games or something. Time's going to tell here in the last 5 days.
Yeah, true. Like if we see all of a sudden Dallas or Colorado drop a game or two while we win a game or two, that might have a big change in there. That's a great point. And obviously, like you just said, they were winning even without him. Huge thanks to Mr. Matt Boldy. Can he get any hotter? Is he... I mean, has he gained is it just a confidence thing right now? Is he truly a star in this league going forward? He's obviously still very young. Are we going to see him every year like this? Or is this he stepped up in a big situation? What do you think about Matt Boldy? I'm sure you got lots of thoughts.
We've loved the kid, and you've loved the kid, and our Iowa Wild contacts have always said, "Wait till you see this kid." Hockey ops here in Minnesota have "Wait till you see this kid." And besides a couple of stretches where he decided to pass the puck too much back in December and January, and his point totals kind of plateaued and went away for a while. If you remember, about a month ago, I think hockey ops and guys like Dean Evison and that coaching staff and the hockey ops front office said, "Matt, we love you so much that we don't care if you always pass the puck because you're a great shooter. You catch a lot of goalies with your motion of your feet and your ability to get quick shots off. How about you start being a shoot-first guy, and then we'll see where it pans out." And we've certainly seen where it pans out with a couple of hat tricks, multiple points in multiple games, many in a row. I don't think he's peaked. I think he can be better. I think what Matt Boldy, Obi is working on is probably some consistency to make sure those January droughts don't raise their heads. And I still think he's going to get better, but holy smokes. I mean, he's awfully good right now. He's been a savior without Kirill Kaprizov. Instant offense when everyone thought the offense was going to go dry without 97 in the lineup. And nobody can say enough words about Matt Boldy, who I can still say who's handled success of this latest hot streak with the same kind of shy kid from South Boston mentality, humble. If it was a great goal, it was a better pass. If it was a great pass, it was a better goal when you're talking to the kid. I hope he stays that way. He's got $50 million coming in a big contract right now. But I still think he has not reached his ceiling, and I still think you'll see a more complete player. And right now, that box to check is consistency. Point totals that don't go away for 10 games and point totals that are more even keel and not the peaks of valleys, which we've seen. And, sophomore slumps happen. You could say he hit a sophomore slump after the first of the year. He's out of his sophomore slump. He's pushing superstar status, and he is something to behold, to be sure.
Yeah, he's amazing. I think in the last 30 days, I don't know the exact number, but he's right up there at the top of the league, if not the top of most goals per game average. It's over 1, which is incredible. Did you hear the story, by the way, about Matt Boldy's dad when he got his hat trick?
Yeah, I did. In fact,
I was actually hat out of there.
I was actually at that game. The thumbnail sketch is Bolds is nearing a hat trick after 2 periods with 2 goals, and his dad's wearing Matt's favorite team-issued hat that Matt gave to his father, who happened to be in from Boston to watch the game in person at XL. So being a smart Boston police officer, Officer Boldy, the dad, goes up to the concession stand, buys a $15 cheap Wild hat in case his kid scores a goal. In the first minute of the third period, Boldy scores the hat trick. The rink fills with hats. He throws his makeshift hat, $15 cheapie, gets caught in the netting, says, "I can't come all the way from Boston and not throw a hat on the ice." So he grabs his favorite team-issued hat, throws it onto the rink, which makes it the first one getting caught in the netting. And he completed Matt's hat trick as a dad by sacrificing his favorite all-time Minnesota Wild team-issued hat. Great story, great family.
It gives me goosebumps.
Hard workers. Rink officials did manage to untangle the newly issued team hat that still had the tag on it. That's why it didn't make it through the netting, and returned the cheap hat to Mr. Boldy, who I'm sure even has a better story now to tell when he wears a hat to Matt's games, hopefully in the playoffs here and for a long time.
And I'm sure he'll get him a new team-issued hat. Or maybe he's just going to keep wearing that hat, because how could you not? It's obviously some good luck behind it. But moving on from Matt Boldy, let's talk about a little bit of bad luck on the team right now, and that's Mason Shaw. It's very sad to see him go down, obviously. Is this a third or fourth time with the same injury.
This is his fourth anterior cruciate ligament surgery. Western Canada kid, comes from a farm, a hardworking kid, a kid who was told what to do. If he wanted to be in the National Hockey League, basically the credo of the Wild is how bad do you want to play in the National Hockey League? I think I saw Bill Guerin quoted on that. And Matt Boldy Mason Shaw checked all of those boxes. I tell you, it's still such a sore subject because it's such a sad subject that sources within the organization that I talked to can hardly still talk about it. When I asked him how Mason Shaw was doing, he said he's upbeat, he's determined. He's in an option year right now, but it sounds like the Wild have already kind of verbally committed to re-sign him because that kind of determination and that kind of gusto is infectious. And if you remember when he came up from Iowa Wild at the end of the first of the after the first of the year, his presence alone and his character and his hard work ethic solidified that fourth line, and that fourth line became very important to the Wild. So Mason Shaw, I don't believe, is going anywhere unless we would find out it's physically or humanly impossible to recover from 4 ACLs. But where there's a will, there's a way, and I wouldn't bet against Mason Shaw. But very sad subject. This team is very cohesive. And by the way, it's coincided with a couple of game losing streak here now. I mean, physically losing him to Las Vegas on the road and coming home after losing in Vegas and losing at home now isn't a sole excuse, Mason Shaw, but it is a factor for sure because that's how much he means to this team physically, emotionally, and what I'm told, spiritually.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, he's still going to be around, obviously cheering him on in the locker room, things like that. Hopefully he's a little inspiration to them, be like, hey, I'm out here, he's not. I'll do it for him. So hopefully we see that. And I don't know, Billy G, he makes the right move. So he knew what he was doing with Mason Shaw, and he knew what he's doing with Boldy, Kaprizov, all around. I'm very happy with Bill Guerin ever since he got here, and I think that's just showing good respect of what you said, that they are going to bring back Shaw, even after his fourth injury. Speaking of Billy G, I think you and I were chatting the other day about how many fence jumpers there were when Gus the Bus got brought on board. We're not going to miss Cam Talbot now. My gosh. I think I even said on the podcast, I'm sure somebody could go back. I was like, I don't know what they're doing here. It feels like a downgrade, but absolutely not. We were wrong. General managers are the first to tell you got to be lucky to be good, that old saying, and some luck involved, but a very good projection and a very good trade, especially now. And it leads us to the one of the bigger hot stove topics right now with Minnesota Wild playoff hockey is number 1 goalie, number 2 goalie. Who gets the start? Is it Marc-Andre? Is it Gus the Bus? Gus the Bus. Let me ask you what you think. Who gets that first playoff game, and how is it determined? I mean, I feel like you got to put in the hottest hand at the moment. Whoever has been the hottest, obviously, like we said earlier in the podcast too, we're kind of in playoffs right now. If we're trying to win the conference, it is a playoff situation. Every one of these games is very meaningful. If we see Gus the Bus go out there, if we see him go out there against the Blues or the Blackhawks and let up 4 or 5 goals, then, first game, I might go with Fleury because, right now is pressure. These are pressurized games more than anything all season. So you got to go with the hottest hand. But also, we looked at what happened last year, and Fleury was the starter last year, but he also is a Hall of Famer. I don't know. You can't really make a wrong guess here. I feel like it's an absolute coin flip. I think that's a wonderfully answered question. I want to give you a very important door prize at the end of our podcast for answering that question. But that is exactly the deal. Nobody's going to commit to number 1 or number 2 goalie in the playoffs with 5 games left in the season. They're going to watch their 2 goalies, watch them carefully, see where they're at, and make a decision likely at the playoff break, be at the end of the regular season and the playoff break. And it's still a gut, probably. It's still probably a little bit of a gut feeling. I think the Wild front office would tell you last year, and the coaching staff, that they played a gut hunch on Fleury, got down in their series against the Blues. I don't think this year will be as much of a gut reaction or playing a hunch situation. I think they'll look at the hot hand, exactly how
how you just described there, and go from there. And the good news, both of them are playing well enough to know that if the statistics don't indicate it after the first game of the playoffs, you have a ready reserve, and I don't think there'll be any. I'm hearing a rotation. Some of my sources are saying, amongst the coaching staff, they're saying maybe just it is going to be a rotation until someone proves us otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the way to go. And obviously, as playoffs go on, hopefully we make it to the champion, to the finals of the Stanley Cup. But when you get there, you're going to know who the hot hand is. You're going to know who you're going to be wanting to put in there. It's not going to be a question. I think they're going to figure that out pretty quick over the next 5 days too. And maybe when we face the Blues, maybe we see Marc-Andre Fleury go fight Bennington. I've heard talk of this. It could happen. It almost happened last game, but I don't know. I think it's too meaningful right now, right?
Yeah. In fact, that question was broached with some sources last night, and it was just a situation where they're probably more worried about Bennington, with nothing to play for and nothing to lose.
True.
Kind of. So whether they even present a situation where Bennington could fight Fleury, or if it's going to be Gus the Bus for the Blues, but no way, no how, as a veteran and a Stanley Cup champion and a proven, gamer like Marc-Andre Fleury going to fight within 5 games of the playoffs, because I don't think he's ever fought before, and strange things happen in fights, usually bad things, and just to settle some sort of score from earlier in the season and, basically hostage your team because of
against
something stupid happening.
Against a non-playoff contender, too. No.
Not going to happen. I mean, never say never, but
I think Fleury's
I'd be
professional enough and veteran enough to know that he cannot go out there and fight and risk, even if accidentally somehow he gets clocked in the face and now you got a black eye heading into playoffs and you can't see as well out of your left eye.
Broke a finger or...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a finger on your blocker hand or something, that can be really bad too. So
here's what we could get excited about. Maybe the Blues and Wild will play each other in the preseason next year. With a whole season ahead of them, and it's the Bennington Fleury matchup on day 3 of the season versus 3 games left of the season.
There, perfect. Let them drop the gloves then. I'll be all for it.
Yeah.
All right, let's just talk a little bit more about some of Billy G's moves. Obviously, we just talked about Gus the Bus, but some of the other moves he's made at the deadline this year have really been looking good. I think, we said like Kaprizov being out, the team still being hot. I think a lot of that, you got to tip your cap to Billy G and what he brought on board.
Yeah.
Starting with Klingberg, in my mind, he's amazing. He is what they would call, an offensive D. He plays hard.
Yes.
He does not necessarily worry about holding the zone. He may let up a breakaway or two. He can make you nervous sometimes about that, but he's going to bury some goals and he's going to set up some great passes. I mean, he's fun to watch, I think.
No doubt about it. And fits right in with another handful of Swedes on the team when you think about Johansson and Sundqvist and Nyquist and Brodin and Ek. Good culture for the Euros there. But to your point, he's in pro hockey what you call a riverboat gambling defenseman, and that's where he doesn't really care too much about where he is on the ice and what he is on the ice. And guess what? Billy Guerin and the Wild knew that going in. They needed a hard right-handed defenseman that's got a bomb for a slap shot who can run a power play. He's been worth everything that happened. However, I am told that they're having discussions with him, much like they had with Marco Rossi and much like they had with Kalen Addison, who's been used very sparingly right now, is that you've got to play some defense now. This is the playoffs, and your riverboat gambling looks great, and especially when it turns out. But if we're going to be surrendering goals because of your riverboat gambling, we might be taking the cards out of your hand here. Yeah. And I do believe that could be, something that Klingberg is definitely listening to, and whether it resonates with him. He's been around the league a long time. That's the way he plays. Mm-hmm. And if he wants
to change your game style,
that's
a hard ask for sure.
If he wants to reel it in, he's going to play the whole playoffs. But if he's throwing caution to the wind out there, and we're seeing odd man rushes and bad things happen because he's 10 feet inside the blue line and the other team's breaking back 2-on-1 or 3-on-1. That will be a problem. This is a coaching staff that is committed to defense first and committed to following the blend and the mold and the idea of this team, which is defense first and, score opportunistically, which has been their recipe for success this season and for basically under Dean Evason's regime.
Yeah, for sure. And, got to love ourselves some Klingberg. That's interesting, though, to see what is going to happen because, I mean, you ask anybody to change their style of gameplay who's been doing it that long in such a professional and brilliant way, honestly, that's going to be tough. So I'm curious to keep an eye on that for sure.
And to that point, Kalen Addison, basically rookie season in the National Hockey League, didn't always adhere to the direction that they're trying to give Klingberg right now about being more responsible defensively. And look where Kalen Addison ended up. Now, you're gonna run out of players if you're trying to prove points with this, and you're going to stand to it because you only have so many defensemen, you only have so many right-handers and left-handers. But I absolutely agree with you. We're teaching an old dog a new trick here with Klingberg, but the fact of the matter is, even a rookie like Addison kind of tempted fate a little bit. Listened for a few games, played better. But, I mean, Kalen Addison was very good on the Wild power play, but the Wild said, not if you're not playing defense. You're not only not going to play on the power play, you're not going to be in the lineup. And, they've stuck to it.
Well, we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that. I'm excited to see what comes up in the next few games, and we'll have to bring that back up on the podcast. We were talking about Billy Guerin's stuff. The one that's really kind of flown under the radar is Marcus Johansson. He was kind of the first to come newly from the Washington Capitals. And when that trade happened, I was like, what are we doing? I was kind
Hasn't
of
he been here
honestly.
before? Haven't we seen this act? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I did not know what to expect. Not that I was necessarily against the trade. I just was kind of like, that's what we're doing? Okay. But
boy, oh boy, did he jumpstart the second line, and has he fit in? Is his jumping onto the scene part of Matt Boldy's goal scoring frenzy?
I don't know how you could say it's not, honestly.
The answer is yes.
Marcus Johansson, Eck, and Boldy, that line is not changing. Let's hope there's no injuries, knock on wood.
No chance.
My gosh, that line is absolutely fire right now.
Yeah,
Can't get
Oscar
much hotter.
Sundqvist. No question about it. Oscar Sundqvist, another Swede, picked up a kind of a heavier set, jovial guy who pounds bodies and plays that third and fourth line, and that's been a great move by Billy G. Now, we might not be talking about any of these players as they're kind of fit that rental tag for next year, but holy cow, and then you get back down to Brodin and Eck, and you've got the Swedish flag hanging in the locker room, and everybody's comfortable. Billy's played his cards. Billy Guerin has really played his cards well, and I don't think it's a fluke. I think he was, strapped with the team here that was cash poor, and he's hammed and egged and, done some riverboat gambling of his own, and right now he's looking pretty good at that card table.
Theme of the show right now, riverboat gambling.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, all right, this obviously is a little longer podcast than we normally do, but I think there's just been so much to talk about lately. We haven't had a podcast in a little while. We're going to be coming out with them a lot more now, headed into playoffs. To me,
we are.
Playoffs right now.
Yeah, we are.
So let's take a look at, I kind of want to do something with you. I want to kind of take a look at each of the schedules since we're tied. We have a 3-way tie. We talked about this in the beginning of the show. We're going to look at the Colorado schedule, Dallas schedule, and Minnesota schedule, and kind of determine where you think the points are going to fall just by who they're playing. And then we'll kind of see. Let me grab a pen here so I can jot this down.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I got my keyboard.
And these are the three teams that are all tied for our viewers and listeners at home. And so this is how it plays out.
Yes. So each one has 98 points.
98.
But Colorado has played one less game, and they still have 98 points. So let's start with Colorado in this scenario. First of all, they almost fell last night. Did you to the Sharks of all teams?
I saw that
in overtime.
I saw that.
So hey, the more the Sharks can make them skate and wear them down, the better. I'm all for it.
And they get them again. They get them again. Isn't that a home and home?
Yep, Thursday again. Yep. So it's in San Jose.
Okay.
Both of the games were. So we've got Sharks coming up. Are you giving that to the Avalanche the next game again? I feel like you kind of have to, even though they went to overtime. Would you agree?
I'd give them a point. I don't know if I'd give them two, especially if the Sharks played them that tough in Colorado and the Sharks
they played
home.
in San Jose that game too.
Okay, the other way. Yep. Okay, for sure. Okay, then 2 to the Avs. 2 to the Avs.
Okay.
That's my
2 to the Avs, and then they play the Kings in LA.
That's a tough game. Kings are surging, but I also think that the Avs are good enough to probably get a point out of there, not 2, but for sure I think they could get 1.
All right, so they're up to 3 points. All right, and then we've got the Ducks in Anaheim.
Dangerous game, but no chance are the Avs going to fold with a couple games left. So that's 2 points for the Avs. So that's 5 now we're looking at.
5, yep. And now we got the Oilers at home for the Avs.
I think that's a toss-up game. I think the Oilers are surging right now, and I think they're a tough hockey team. I don't think Colorado gets a point there, so they would stay at 5, and that would give them 103. They'd be locked at 103 right there.
Yep, and then they've got the Jets. They got the Jets,
They'll beat the Jets
at home. Okay, so now
Jets at home.
So now they're at 105.
Correct.
And then they got the Predators in Nashville to end the season.
Now they got 107.
Yep. All right. So we got the Avs at 107. Let's take a look at the Stars next. They have the same amount of games left as the Wild. The Stars are going to be playing on Thursday against the Flyers in Philly.
That's a win. Doesn't matter where that game is. That's a win.
Yep.
Philly's gone.
Or actually, no, sorry. It's a home game for them.
Doesn't. Well, then they're really Flyers are really in trouble.
Yeah. So that's 2 points. All right. So they're at 100 already. And now we've got Golden Knights. That's going to be a tough game. The Stars, I feel like.
To make it interesting, let's say they get an overtime loss and a point.
Give them 1. All right. So now they're at 101. And then they have 2 away games in a row. They got Detroit on the road.
Win.
Yep.
2 more points.
So they're 103. And then St. Louis on the road against the Blues.
Yeah, it's 2 more points.
Yep. All right. So they're at 105. Now we got the Blues at home. Another 2 points. They're at 107.
Yeah.
Right? Got to give it to them. So now you're talking, we got a tie between the Avalanche and the Stars. Let's see how this shakes out.
Yeah, are we getting down to records against each other here? We don't have enough time for that. But right now,
they don't do any kind of tiebreakers, right? You go down to records in the NHL?
You go down to records against opponents. Yep.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
All right, so let's take a look at the Wild. We're at 98 right now. We got the Penguins this week. Where are you feeling?
I think the Wild are coming. They're not going to lose 3 in a row, but they might not win this game. But let's give them a point for sure.
All right, we'll give them 1 point there, and then we got at home against the Blues on Saturday, Bennington Fleury Fight Day.
That's
all right. That's a win. All right, so we got them up to 3. So now
minus the fight, please.
Minus the fight, yeah. So now we're at 101. Then we got the Blackhawks. Check that off as a win. So now we're at 103. And we have the Jets at home for the Wild.
That's a win. The Wild have had Winnipeg's number this year, and that's especially if they're a point or 2 out. That's a fully focused game, and they'll play whoever they need to play there. And yeah, that's their last home game, I believe, too, before they go to Nashville to wrap it up. So that's a win for sure. So that's 5 for them again.
That's 105. That's 105 we're at now. So Nashville on the road. We're gonna check that up as a win.
We are.
All right. So we're at 107. So we have an exact tie between all 3 teams. So to me, I feel like the biggest of all the games for the Wild is that the Penguins game this week, to be honest. Like, I feel like the rest, we've got their number. We're going to be able to pull ahead. But if we can get a win against the Penguins, because we only gave them 1 point in this scenario, let's say we flip that to 2 points, we're talking Wild win now, the division, by 1 point. So
that's exactly right. And we're for sure right on all of our guesses, too. So
yeah, 100%.
People can book this and bet this and everything else. A note on the Penguins, they're battling just to make the playoffs. So that's not... that Penguin game is going to be a tough one. But again, I think it's been a while since the Wild lost 3 games in a row, and I don't see that happening.
And our road record really hasn't been that bad this year, honestly.
Well, and we might have to really eat that, right? Because if we don't lock up home ice, we'll be playing on the road. But to your point, that might not be as scary a proposition as it looks to be. It's always nice to have, but the Wild have not been afraid to win on the road this year, and surely they're a team that sometimes you talk to hockey clubs and they takes the pressure off. A game one at home and a game two at home. So we shall see, Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, it's going to be close. And I'm not exactly sure. Let's just say they all tied 107 of who has the lead. I believe the Stars would be ahead of us. I don't know about Colorado. I think that they would be ahead of the Stars, but I don't know if they would be ahead of us.
I think Colorado has a 3-1 record against Minnesota, and I know Dallas owns the tiebreaker against the Wild. So
either way, we
scenario,
need to win. So if we tie, all three of us, we're going to end up in third. So we need to pull ahead. So it is very important, is what, kind of circling back to my original question to wrap up the show, is how important is it to you that we win the division versus just slip into playoffs and have to face Colorado, Dallas in the first round? Like, how important?
Why do you ask me these tough questions?
I know this is the question that's on everybody's mind right now. This is what I've been wondering. Is it really important, or is it like, hey, if we fall to the Penguins and somehow we fall the next game, we're like, hey, we're out of it. Let's rest our guys. Let's chill. We're going to fall into third, even if we end up tying. When is that importance kind of flipped?
Well, what you just talked about, but the original question, the originally tough question that I can't believe you've asked me and put me on the spot here on Hot Tip Sports is statistically your odds are better with home ice advantage, especially for a Game 7, situation and you're playing at home. That said, I don't think this is a Minnesota Wild team that fears the road, and I think they're in a lot better situation to open up on the road as they've ever been. They've done things very unconventionally this year with really bad streaks of hockey and really great streaks of hockey, but the bad streaks of hockey have gone away. And I think statistically, obviously they're playing for home ice advantage, and I think statistically they have a better chance of getting to a round two for the first time in a long time. But they're in the playoffs, and you're not going to just throw hope to the Wolves there if you're opening up a 7-game series on the road if you're the Minnesota Wild. By the way, one quick hot stove league is that Brock Faber, the star defenseman for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, who plays a semifinal game and then hopefully a championship game over the weekend, will get a game or two in with the Minnesota Wild next week, whether it's on home or on the road. I have that confirmed. So, that's kind of that quick cup of coffee. And I do believe, though I haven't really confirmed this, is that the old rule where a player can't come out of college as a drafted player, but free agents can sign immediately and be available immediately. So that's just a little parting shot and something to keep an eye out for Minnesota Wild fans. Brock Faber in the lineup for his first NHL foray as soon as next week. And
he's a free agent. We didn't
he
draft
is.
Him.
So he is.
Can he play them in playoffs?
He can sign and play in the playoffs as a free agent. If he was Matt Boldy coming from Boston College, and Boston College loses this weekend, and the Wild drafted Matt Boldy, he can only play regular season games.
Interesting.
So hold the phone on that.
So last thing on that, and we'll wrap this up. But playoffs, we're going to see him out there then? Or is he going to be around in some games, some not some games?
I told you. I've answered 3 tough questions now on this edition of Hot Tip Sports.
You brought up Faber, and now you got me all excited. And we will.
Do you remember how you answered the question? You remember how you answered the question of goaltenders? Like you just play the hot hand and you play the streak. The litmus test will be on how Faber's game translates to the National Hockey League game from NCAA hockey, and. Awesome. The other factor would be is I don't know if it's going to be Matt Dumba, but is it another defenseman, even if it's offhanded for Faber, who shoots right? You play the hot hand, I think.
Yep,
It's been done before. It's been done before. College free agents have, had a quick baptism in the National Hockey League and played in the playoffs. I believe. I can't say McCarr did that, but I think he was a drafted player, obviously. But there's precedents of college players turning pro via the free agent route that have been very good in the playoffs, albeit their first, and that's definitely a possibility and a situation here that Mr. Faber from the University of Minnesota, hopefully the 2023 national champions here in a couple days, will be looking at.
Yep. And Makar, speaking of him, he was out yesterday against San Jose, so
heard
wondering
that
when he's going to be back, because if he was in the lineup, I doubt that goes to overtime. But anyway,
heard that, and they've clinched, and they're yeah.
So that'll be interesting to watch. It's an injury watch. It's just like any sport, doesn't matter what it is. Usually in the end, it's the hottest team that wins the Stanley Cup or the World Series or the Super Bowl. And right now, I feel like the Wild are the hottest team. I don't want to. I've been in Minnesota sports long enough. We do enough of these podcasts to try not to get our optimism too high. But you know what? I feel really good, better than ever. We've only won the division one time ever in Wild history. I think this is going to be the next year, and we're going to do another podcast, I think, probably later in the week, maybe after the national championship game. We could talk Brock Faber a little bit more, maybe Friday.
There you go.
Obviously, the Pittsburgh game that we said is probably the most important game of the year for the Wild.
Yeah.
That one will be done. So, make sure you tune in, subscribe to us on YouTube, and hit that notification button. That way you know as soon as we post a podcast. We're going to be doing them throughout the playoffs and everything. Find us on Twitter. We got some active content on there during games. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, anywhere you find Hot Dish Sports. We also have some T-shirts if anybody wants a T-shirt on our website, hotdishsports.com, and go Wild.